Tevez asked for a transfer. Alan Pardew beats Liverpool in his first game as Newcastle manager, and Chris Hughton is linked with West Ham. Step on to this week's merry-go-round with Paul Hayward, Chief Sports Writer of The Observer. Steve Bates is the Chief Football Writer of The People, and Matt Lawton is here. He's the Chief Football Correspondent of The Daily Mail. And it's Carlos Tevez that dominates the back pages. Every paper has the story. This is the news of the world. Tevez, I quit. Neil Ashton's gone much harder, their football correspondent, than any other paper on his breakdown in relationships with manager Roberto Mancini. Others have gone on the homesickness, but Neil's gone really hard on the fact that he cannot stand to stay at City any longer, and this piece inside reflects that. I've got to get away, I just can't stand it. That's from Tevez in this Neil Ashton piece. Let me just bring you a couple of other stories on the back of the News of the World. Obscene, they're highlighting a row that Joey Barton had with Fernando Torres, various gestures that the Newcastle man made yesterday, and it'll be interesting to see if the FA react to that. Little story here as well that Fergie's bumper pay rise, a £500,000 pay rise for Sir Alex Ferguson for becoming the longest serving manager in Manchester United's history. That'll happen next weekend. Turn to the Mail on Sunday, same kind of story. Tevez, I want to quit City, but they're homing in on the homesickness line. He wants to go back to Argentina. Obviously, we're going to come to that very, very shortly. This is the Sunday Mirror. Tev, I'm off. All the sort of themes on the same story here. Just draw your attention to this one. Alan Pardew saying, I didn't knife Hughton. Hughton was sacked this week by Newcastle. It intrigues me because nobody has accused him of doing that. I don't know why he's come out and said that as well. This is Paul Hayward's paper, The Observer. Perfect start for Pardew. They beat Liverpool 3-1 yesterday. This is Andy Carroll celebrating the third goal. Quite an impressive performance by Newcastle. Not such an impressive performance by Liverpool. We'll have a look at them as well. But this is the Sunday People's take on it. This one's for you, Chris. This is the Newcastle players dedicating the victory to Chris Hughton there. Hughton linked with Hammers is that same story there. An awful row going on between Arsenal and Manchester United before the big clash at Old Trafford tomorrow. Various words, we'll have a look at that. This highlights that in the back of the Sunday Express. You don't have the X factor. This is Nasri having a go back at Manchester United because it was Evra who said that Arsenal was scared and would win nothing on Saturday morning. That's a huge clash at Old Trafford tomorrow. We'll have a detailed look at that. And they're also highlighting Hammers in for Hughton if Grant fails. West Ham looking at Avram Grant's future, bottom of the Premier League. We'll have a look at managers under pressure a little bit later on as well. Only one place to start, Steve Bates. The Manchester atmosphere has been bubbling around, obviously, City. Now Tevez has asked for transfer. They're joint top. How do you solve it? I mean, they've already said, no, you can't go. But if he's determined, you've got an unhappy player on your hands. Yeah,
I think history shows, particularly with Manchester United's experience, that once Carlos Tevez decides that it's run its course for him at a particular club, then he's not going to hang around. And I think there are a few various elements to this. I think there's also a few smokescreens going around. I'm not sure the homesickness kind of angle is completely the right one. I believe Carlos Tevez was given last week off because he was suspended, of course, for the game at West Ham yesterday, but surprisingly didn't return to Argentina to be with his family. So that maybe tells you something. I'm not sure whether Tevez's family were flown out to Europe to meet him. I'm told possibly not. So you do have to wonder what's motivating him in this situation, and whether it is indeed perhaps a contract disputes, because City have, I think, put out a statement this morning that paints a different picture of a contract wrangle going on behind the scenes, that Tevez wants an improved and upgraded contract.
There are stories saying that they've offered him £250,000 a week to stay. But if you're determined to go, as he says he is, there's no way back for City on that, because you've got this unhappiness at the player. We've seen it so many times, haven't we?
Yeah, I think he's already the top paid player at Manchester City. You know, he's obviously a huge transfer from Manchester United. I think that was probably the reason he went, the kind of money on offer from Manchester City. So whether it is actually money motivating him, we'll have to wait and see. But I think inevitably, you know, this is the start of the end game for Carlos Tevez and Manchester City.
Do you think he'll go in January transfer window?
I'm not sure it'll be as soon as January, because, you know, Roberto Mancini is a hard-nosed, kind of experienced manager whose priority will be making sure Manchester City finish where he thinks they should do,
Right.
which, given tomorrow's result, may well be at the top of the Premier League.
Yeah.
So I don't think he's going to be in a hurry to allow Carlos Tevez to leave. And you also have to ask the question, where's he going to go?
Yeah.
You know, as Manchester City found out, I think they had to pay a lot more than 26 million to get him away from Manchester United. I think it's more like 46 million. So who's got that kind of money in January?
Do you have any sympathy for Tevez at all or not?
I have a bit of sympathy in the sense that I take Steve's point about the family, but the fact that his wife hasn't settled in Manchester and has gone back to Argentina, that is difficult. But I don't really understand what his problem is. You know, he knew what life in Manchester was like before he joined City, because he's obviously been just across the city at United. And as Steve said, you know, he's being paid an awful lot of money. I think for Manchester City, it's an absolute nightmare, because the guy's scored 39 goals in 60 appearances. He's absolutely sort of key to any success they might have this season. And it's somehow they've got to try and resolve it. But again, I thought, you know, echoing Steve, it looks like the end game. You know, this kind of thing blows up, like something as drastic as a transfer request. I really do. I wince when players do that, or when you know, when advisors do that, or you know, it's just gonna isolate him.
Yes. But I mean, if you're Mancini, how do you deal with it? I mean, you just say, I'm not selling him, that's it. He can do whatever he likes. Or do you have to have a sympathy with him? Do you put him in the reserves? Do you not play him? I mean, it's been coming, isn't it, the row with Mancini?
It has. Like there was a very public display of disrespect, really, last week when he was taken off. Again, I don't like seeing that. I don't think players should do that. I think they should always show respect to their manager. You know, until we really know what the truth is behind why he wants to leave, I think it's presumably Mancini knows what it is. I think it's, you know, it's hard for us to speculate how he can resolve it. But you know, I think Mancini, I think he's right to be tough with players. There are a lot of dissenting voices there, a lot of unrest in that dressing room, and you know, I think the manager is someone that should be supported.
Yeah. Did this smack of player power, Paul, or not? I mean, you've got the biggest name there, the talisman, the captain, is almost challenging, isn't he? Saying, OK, well, I don't like it, I'm going.
Yeah, I mean, Tevez is a hired gun who chases the dollar, really. I think he's shown us that already. It's almost a rerun of the Rooney situation. There's a brinkmanship going on here. I think there's a wider context to it as well. As I understand it, Tevez considered very seriously leaving in the summer. He got very restless in the summer. Doesn't particularly like playing for Mancini, but I like the fact that the club has taken a stand, really, and taken him on, him and his advisor, with this statement that they released last night, saying that they are disappointed with the actions of his representative, setting out their position very clearly. They've been very compassionate about the homesickness and so on. And it was important for City to do that, because I think you know, you can't be dictated to by star players and their representatives, and City, I thought, handled that situation last night brilliantly. Yeah.
Do you think what we saw on the touchline last weekend was part of all the frustration that he's feeling with Mancini?
Yes, definitely. There's a long-standing frustration on the players' side, I think, with the management style, the training methods and so on. And Tevez has been stewing for a long time, I think, about the way the first team is run. But given his history, you know, you'd suspect him of being selfish anyway, of wanting to renegotiate, of looking after his own interests ahead of those of the team. So, you know, you've always got to have that in mind. Whenever you're looking at his grievances and trying to understand them, you've got to look at the history of him and his representatives. They're a pretty acquisitive bunch.
Yeah. I think if you analyse but Paul's just alluded to it there, if you analyse the spat that they had last week when he was substituted at the very end of the game, I think the stat is something like Tevez has been substituted for just 32 minutes of all games this season. Now, to be taken off a couple of minutes from the end of a game is usually the manager, and I believe Tevez scored the winning goal in that game, I'm not sure, but it's usually a sign that he's getting an ovation from
he scored the only goal of the game.
The fans.
Yeah.
Now, you know, would you really react that violently to be taken off with a few minutes to go? If he'd been taken off after 50 minutes and been hauled off, then there'd be an element of humiliation to that. I can't see any humiliation in Tevez being substituted with a couple of minutes to go.
Yeah, you're clearly going down the road of unhappy with what's going on at City behind the scenes for Tevez, rather than the homesickness thing.
I think I am, yeah. And
Yeah.
you know, whether that proves to be correct in the end, I don't know. Maybe there are all kinds of elements coming together here, but it does sound very suspicious that 4 or 5 weeks ago, Tevez and his advisors were speaking to Manchester City about an improved playing
Right.
contract.
Right.
Now, you know, when you've got that in the background, you know, it's difficult to see any other reason for wanting to go, and maybe the other elements are smoke screens.
It's interesting, the point you made about Rooney, for instance, because Sir Alex Ferguson, in smoothing that over, was very critical of his agent. Obviously, his agent's Paul Stretford. And this time, maybe that Tevez needed to be better advised behind the scenes as well?